You want to talk good basketball? Well, let's take you back to Friday night and Eastern Michigan against Michigan. And when you talk about this game initially and you don't know the background about it, you'd think that the Wolverines would just take off and run with it. Ranked 22nd in the nation, Eastern Michigan is one of those MAC teams that really hasn't done anything in the past. But when you really dig into it and you know who's on that squad, Emoni Bates, a few other Power 5 transfers, this game gets really fun and juicy. Emoni Bates scores a career high of 30 in this game. Does come up with the loss. Michigan does find a way to win 88-83, but don't sleep on this Eastern Michigan team. This team is going to be very fun to watch. I would be very interested to see how they handle the MAC with the rest of the year. I could see this team finding themselves into March, maybe making a couple upsets. Who knows? Maybe sneaking into the second round, maybe finding themselves in the Sweet 16 behind Emoni Bates and company. This is a guy I think that's just going to consistently raise his draft stock all season long, Steve.
It's probably the performance of the early season so far. Again, we're only about a week, into the college basketball season on the men's side, but yeah, he was just electric. He was everywhere. And sometimes a team that maybe is not well regarded can run tails of their star player and make a big splash against the NCAAs. Steph Curry at Davidson. This is before your time, but we'll go back to your home area. Calvin Murphy at Niagara.
All right.
You just have those players that just go off and dominate and nobody can shut them down. Maybe they keep them in check to a degree, but they can't shut them down. But Eastern Michigan is a program too that is great at integrating players, especially like local or regional. I wouldn't say local, but regional players into the program that might have been disappointments at other schools or just weren't comfortable. They bring them into their program and then those kids want to play. They just play better. They're more comfortable at home. So I certainly was a wake-up call from Michigan, because they're going to face teams that have a big scorer that they're going to have to do something about.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that Eastern Michigan hung in as long as they did, wow. It was a great game. I didn't see it. I watched it in the replay. You had texted me a bunch of things saying, oh, you've got to see this game. You've got to watch this game. So I even stayed up and watched it before I went to bed because you were so excited about it. But
yeah, it was a good game. It was a really good game. I think that on the Michigan side, though, we saw a couple things that we were curious about when we talked about Michigan in our preview. Hunter Dickinson looked fantastic. He scored 30. He scored 31, 13 from 17 from the field. One of my issues with Llewellyn about can he be a facilitator, we only saw 3 assists from him. We saw 12 points from him. We saw him 0 for 3 from the three-point line. So I think there's a little bit of still work to do with the transfer Llewellyn on the Michigan side. And Jet Howard, he had a great first game, a little iffy in this one, only scoring 9 points. Really wasn't as big of a factor as he was in the opening round, in the opening game, if you will, compared to this one against Eastern Michigan. I think there's a lot of good things to be excited about with this Michigan team. I still think they're going to be one that runs in the Big Ten, does some really interesting things throughout the season. The Big Ten's a really tough conference this year. I think there's a lot of teams that are going to make some noise. They got to figure a few things out before they get to conference play. And one of them, I think, is getting another consistent scorer other than Dickinson, before they get to the conference play, and whether it's Llewellyn, whether it's Jet Howard, and then finding a true facilitator. That is something that we were worried about in the preview. I think we are seeing those concerns early, Steve. So I'm interested to see if that happens. They play University of Virginia at the end of the month. That'll be another true test for them.
Well, I think the Virginia game will be an interesting test because Virginia is a defense-first team, and Michigan needs to find a way to solve that. They're a more explosive side when everything is falling into place. But I think that Michigan is sort of on pace for where they need to be early. I think they've got to figure out their rotations. I think they got to figure out who's going to really, like you said, who's going to be the guy that's going to distribute the basketball, who's going to be the secondary scorer. Those things will kind of flush themselves out with a team like Michigan, because there's a lot of really good athletes. They're going to be in the mix of things, going there. I'm looking forward to that game against Virginia, because I think that's going to tell us how good Michigan could be, or how long. I mean, are we talking February or late January before Michigan really gets into its comfort zone and starts firing on all cylinders? So that Virginia test, I think, is probably the most important one they're going to face, because they're going to have to not get frustrated. They're going to need to stay disciplined against a very disciplined and great defensive team in Virginia.